Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are looking at the absolute bedrock of global economics. We're tracing how human survival scaled up, right? Going from just keeping a single family alive, all the way to pulling immense wealth from the earth to fuel our modern world. And yes, that includes the very device you're watching this on right now. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our agenda for today. We're covering 5 key areas. First, the red-collar economy. Second, hunting and gathering. Third, pastoralism, herds and ranches. Fourth, global agricultural systems. And number 5, the mining industry.
All right, Section 1, the red-collar economy, direct extraction from the earth.
So, to really understand this, we need to look at what we call red-collar workers. These are the folks whose outdoor work inherently ties them to nature. They are directly utilizing the Earth's raw resources. We're talking land, water, vegetation, and minerals. Whether it's hunting, farming, or mining, these primary activities are literally the building blocks for every other industry on the planet.
Moving right along, Section 2, hunting and gathering, the oldest economic activities known to humanity.
Now, think about this for a second. Why has hunting been completely banned in India? Well, early hunters used pretty primitive tools, right? So the environment could easily recover. But as technology advanced, the game changed entirely. Rampant illegal poaching drove so many species right to the brink of extinction. Basically, the sheer scale of modern extraction simply outpaced nature's ability to replenish itself.
We actually see a really similar evolution with plant life. On one hand, you have primitive gathering, which is purely about survival. It's subsistence-based, yields very little, and is often practiced in harsh climates with almost zero capital. Contrast that with commercial gathering. This is market-oriented, extracting highly valuable resources like medicinal plants, bark, and rubber. But here's the crazy twist. Even this commercial market is struggling globally today. Why? Because cheaper, better quality, lab-made synthetic alternatives have largely replaced these natural items on the world market. Okay, Section 3, pastoralism, herds and ranches, moving from simple survival to agricultural science. A really key concept here is transhumance. It's basically a seasonal migration process where herders move from the plains up to lush mountain pastures in the summer and then back down to the plains during the winter. For example, in the Himalayas, traditional groups like the Gujars and Bakarwals have done this for generations. But unfortunately, these ancient nomadic areas are actively shrinking. They're getting squeezed out by strict political boundaries and new modern settlement plans.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast it presents. On one side, you have nomadic herding. This is primitive subsistence, pure survival, relying on a variety of animals and driven by tradition and vast migration across places like the Sahara. But then, look at commercial livestock rearing in regions like New Zealand and Argentina. This is highly capital-intensive, it uses permanent fenced-in parcels of land, and relies heavily on scientific single-animal specialization. It's a massive shift from just surviving to highly organized scientific agriculture. This brings us to Section 4, global agricultural systems, cultivating the earth at an incredible scale. Let's look at shifting cultivation, which you might know as slash-and-burn farming. The process is pretty harsh but straightforward. Step 1, you clear the vegetation by fire, because the ashes actually add fertility to the soil. Step 2, you cultivate those small patches with primitive tools. But here's the catch. Step 3, that soil completely loses its fertility after just 3 to 5 years. So, Step 4, the farmer has to abandon it and shift to a new forest patch. Whether it's called juming in India or milpa in Mexico, it's a continuous cycle of short-term survival that ends up constantly depleting the earth. So that brings us to a fascinating puzzle. Why does commercial green cultivation have a remarkably low yield per acre, but an incredibly high yield per person? It's really all about mechanization. Unlike densely populated farming areas in Asia, where heavy manual labor squeezes every ounce of food from a tiny plot, these commercial farms in the American prairies are absolutely enormous. The land itself might yield less wheat per acre, but because one farmer driving a massive combine harvester can manage hundreds of acres, that single person's output is just astronomical. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer diversity of modern farming. As you can see, geography and capital dictate pretty much everything. You have massive plantation farming focusing on profit-oriented single crops, relying on large capital and cheap labor in places like West Africa or Brazil. Then there's dairy farming in places like New Zealand and Canada,
requiring highly intensive capital and relentless year-round labor. Further down the matrix, you see high-value Mediterranean citrus farming, all the way to market gardening in the Netherlands, where they literally use artificial heating in greenhouses to grow flowers for urbanites. It is incredibly diverse. Beyond what is grown, agriculture is also categorized by how it's organized. We see two distinct models here. First, cooperative farming. This has been highly successful in Denmark, where farmers voluntarily pool their resources for efficiency, but their individual farms remain completely intact. Conversely, you have collective farming. This is based on social ownership of the means of production, pooling all resources and collective labor. A classic example of this is the kolkhoz model from the former Soviet Union. All right, our final stop, Section 5, the mining industry. Excavating wealth and risk. You know, our extraction of minerals basically mirrors human evolution itself. We started out with early tool making in the Copper Age, then moved to weapons and utensils in the Bronze Age. After that came the Iron Age with its more advanced ancient uses. But the actual development and continuous globe-altering boom of the mining industry, that didn't truly explode until the Industrial Revolution, and our appetite for extraction has only accelerated since. Now, how we actually get these minerals comes down to economics and physics. Surface mining, or the open cast method, is the easiest and the cheapest. The minerals are right there, resulting in rapid output and a very low safety cost. But what happens when the ore lies deep below? Well, we're forced into underground mining, or the shaft method. This means sinking deep vertical shafts. It is incredibly risky and requires specially designed lifts and massive ventilation systems just to keep the workers alive. The technological costs and the risks just skyrocket. And honestly, with those deep shafts comes terrifying physical danger. Have you ever read about the mine fires and sudden flooding of coal mines in India? When underground mining goes wrong, it is catastrophic. From poisonous gas leaks to instant cave-ins, the human cost of extracting these deep earth resources can be absolutely devastating. So the crucial point is this massive number right here. Greater than 50%, over half of the total earnings for several developing countries in Africa, South America, and Asia come from minerals alone. Meanwhile, a lot of developed nations are retreating from mining simply because their domestic labor costs are too high. Our global economy heavily relies on developing regions doing the really dangerous work to pull these resources from the earth. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. As we scale from primitive survival to massive global extraction, are our primary activities sustaining the Earth or simply consuming it faster? Every step of our economic evolution has traded natural balance for incredible technological progress. It's basically the fundamental tension of our modern world. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this leaves you eager to dig even deeper into how these primary activities shape our global future.